Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to dive into the most common and also most complex authority type, and that is the emotional authority. And by the end of this video, you'll learn the answers to the following questions. What is emotional authority? How is emotional authority determined? When do you use emotional authority in real life? What are the 3 different types of emotional waves? And how can you start to recognize and experiment with your own emotional authority? So if you enjoy this video and want to continue to learn and deepen your own understanding of human design, I would be so grateful if you could show me some love, hit that like button, and subscribe to my channel. And with that said, welcome back, beautiful souls. And if you're new here, hi, my name is Crystal Alfarero, and I'm a human design teacher and guide, helping people like yourselves understand your unique energetic blueprint through the human design system so that you could really feel empowered as your authentic self, master your energy, and of course, learn to call in that success and fulfillment with so much more ease and flow. I wanted to make this video because emotional authority can be pretty confusing for some people trying to understand it for the first time. You know, how it works and how to experiment with it. And I feel that even if you don't have this authority yourself, it's important to understand, just because over half the population does. And so chances are you have it or someone else that you do know does have it. And once you understand emotional authority and how it works, I feel like that is when you can truly start to begin your own experiment and also start to make those most aligned decisions that feel good and ultimately lead you to the most fulfillment and your most authentic path. Or if you don't have emotional authority like myself, you can better understand your clients or those close to you and be better equipped to support them. So what is emotional authority? Well, first, to understand what emotional authority is, it's important to understand what authority is and the purpose it plays in your human design experiment. And so your authority is a tool in human design that helps you make decisions that are aligned and correct for you. It's the means through which you connect to your intuition and gain clarity around what is true and authentic for you specifically when it comes to decision making. And so if you want to learn more about the basics of authority, I do have a separate video for you to dive into, which I will leave down in the description for you below. But for now, let's focus on emotional authority. So when you have emotional authority, first of all, it means that you have a defined emotional center, and therefore you tend to experience life through these up and down emotional waves. And so when you have emotional authority, it's about riding out these emotional waves and coming to an emotionally neutral point before making a decision, because these emotional waves can often cloud what's true for you in the moment. And generally, your truth and therefore clarity around your truth comes over time. And so that said, giving yourself time isn't necessarily so that you can, overthink it and weigh out the pros and cons. It's so that you can feel into your decision at all points of the emotional wave in order to gain clarity and connect to what actually does feel right for you. The idea is that if you make a decision during these emotional ups and downs, it can often lead you to making decisions that you end up regretting later. For example, someone asks you to go for dinner and they're excited about it, so you get pumped up about it too, and then you end up saying yes. But then a few days later, that excitement wears off and you're just like, ugh, why did I say yes? And the best thing that you can do with an emotional authority is to ask for time before saying yes or no to things, because that's how you're going to get clear on what it is that you do really want to do. Whether that's a day or 2 days, don't feel bad for asking for time before making a decision. Your emotions tend to change the lens through which you perceive things. So if you're on emotional low, any relationship or opportunity that's presented to you at the time might seem shitty, or you just might not be in the mood for it at all and just potentially decline things that are actually aligned for you. Or in contrast, if you're on an emotional high, any relationship that's presented to you might seem amazing, but then realize that it's not right for you at all. That said, if you have emotional authority and you're very much in touch with your feelings and can gain clarity sooner rather than later, by all means, it doesn't mean that you need to wait a week to make a decision, but as always, I encourage you to experiment with this. So how is your emotional authority determined? Basically, if you have a solar plexus defined in your chart, then you will automatically have emotional authority. Even if you have a defined sacral center, you still have emotional authority. Therefore, all types, except for reflectors, are capable of having emotional authority. Another thing to note is that if you are a generator or MG and you do have that defined sacral center, you still experience that gut feeling. Therefore, it's important to check in with your gut once you have gotten to that state of emotional clarity before making a decision. They also say that if you're a generator or MG, typically your first gut reaction is correct, but by waiting out that emotional wave, you'll gain more clarity into what is true and correct for you. So when do you use authority in real life? Well, your authority can be relied on whenever you make decisions with an even bigger emphasis on those big life decisions, whether it's career decisions, business decisions, relationship decisions, or even moving homes, and things that tend to elicit a lot of emotions. So just as an example, if you are a generator or MG and you're inspired by something you hear or see, you would then respond to this thing by leaning into your emotional authority. You would do this first by riding out that emotional wave and then doing a gut check to gain clarity on that thing that you think you want or feel that you want before acting on it to make sure that it's actually aligned to you. And as an example, the majority of my clients are actually generators and MGs who are currently entrepreneurs. And when they come to me, they're often always on the go and feeling stuck around something in their business. So one thing that has been huge in creating an aligned business that feels good is making sure that they give themselves time before saying yes to opportunities or collaborations that come their way, or giving themselves time before implementing certain strategies in their business, even though someone, more successful says that it works. And I actually have my business mentorship clients revisit their current strategies and processes using their authority to declutter or change what doesn't feel right or aligned. By doing this, they make sure that they gain the clarity they need to invest their energy only in the things that do feel aligned. In other words, they take that aligned action to propel themselves forward. And in doing that, they create the circumstances for an aligned business and lifestyle. Similarly, if you're a projector and you receive an invitation, you would lean into your emotional authority to gain clarity around something is the correct invitation for you. And if you're a manifestor and you receive an inner urge to create or initiate something, check in with your emotional authority to gain clarity on whether that urge is correct for you to engage in. And just a reminder, there is no right or wrong way to engage with your authority. It's truly an experiment. But for simplicity's sake, I generally guide my clients to, first of all, bring awareness to what their authority feels like for them, and then have them practice engaging with it and recognizing their response whenever they have to make important decisions. So before we move on to the next part of this video, I had a quick question for all of you who have emotional authority. How do you currently make decisions and work with your emotional authority? Share with me down in the comments below. So what are the 3 different types of emotional waves? Another thing that's insightful to understand when you have a defined solar plexus is that depending on what channels are present in your human design chart that activate your emotional center, this will determine how you specifically experience your particular emotional wave. So the first wave is the individual circuit waves. So if you have channels 3955 or 2212, which are part of the individual circuit, then you'll likely experience a lot of emotional depth and potential moodiness. You have a consistent access to the full range of emotions and therefore feel the highs really high and the lows really low. So it becomes really important for you to learn how to manage and channel that emotion, especially when you're at that low melancholic state, in a productive way for you. The next wave are tribal circuit waves. And so if you have channels 1949, 59.6, or 3740, which are part of the tribal circuit, then you have a very passionate energy that can be more sensitive to relationships or caretaking matters and really anything to do with the survival of your tribe, your community, your family. So decisions that relate to sex, passion, taking care of others can be a pretty big influence on your emotional wave and making decisions. Lastly, we have our collective circuit waves. So if you have channels 4130 or 3635, which are part of the collective circuitry, you have energy that tends to spike upwards and then crashes. And these are people that are fine for a period of time and then have that capacity to experience sudden emotional breaks that seem like they're just kind of random and out of nowhere. And so that summarizes the 3 emotional waves that you could potentially experience. And again, these are just the mechanics behind how they work, but the best way to understand how your specific emotional wave works is through mindfulness and self-observation. Understanding your particular emotional wave can help bring awareness to how your emotions affect you and how they play out in your own life and interactions with others so that you can best manage them in a way that serves you. How can you start to recognize and experiment with your emotional authority? Well, the best way to get to know and understand your emotional authority is to experiment with it. Start to observe what your emotional waves feel like and journal on it. Witness how you feel in an emotional high state, an emotional low, and even a neutral state, and observe the differences. Observe what clarity has felt like for you in the past. And again, I feel that the best way to learn how your own authority works and what it feels like is from experience. I can offer you the mechanics behind how it works, but even 2 people with emotional authority can experience it completely differently. So I encourage you to experiment. Here are some journal questions to help you understand your emotional authority. Number 1, what do you feel and how do you act when you are at an emotional low point? Number 2, what do you feel and how do you act when you are at an emotional high point? Number 3, what do you feel and how do you act when you are relaxed and neutral? Number 4, thinking back to a correct decision that you've made in the past, how did you make that decision and what process did you take? So for example, was it impulsive or did you give yourself more time? And lastly, thinking back to a regretful decision that you've made. How did you make that decision and what process did you take? And hopefully those reflection questions, those journal questions can give you more insight into how your emotional waves, how your solar plexus works for you, and how you can start to identify it so that you can use your emotional authority and connect to it and gain that clarity that you need. And lastly, if you're wanting to get that extra help to help you understand your emotional authority and also see the depths of your chart to see your true potential and would like to do a human design reading, I do offer one-to-one readings that include a 60-minute Zoom call. Plus you get a completely customized 35 plus page human design blueprint for your own learning and reflection that you can always use as a resource guide. And I'll leave all of the information and a link down for you in the description below. And this brings me to the end of this episode where we answer the following questions. What is emotional authority? How is emotional authority determined? When do you use emotional authority in real life? What are the 3 different types of emotional waves? And lastly, how can you start to recognize and experiment with your own emotional authority? If you enjoyed this video, I'd be so grateful if you could show me some love, hit that like button, and hit subscribe to continue learning more about the wonderful human design system. So with that said, have an amazing day or evening wherever you are, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye.